Joe Thomas today is brought to us by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results, but no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier, and at Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver all the things we need, from small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions. We'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way, because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most out of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier finds the lane. Discover your success at www.easierwithepicor.com. And with that, we are thrilled to welcome in my best friend in the world, the one and only, Joe Thomas. What's up, Joe?
What's up, McNuggets? I'm glad that nickname is stuck, and they'll be calling you McNuggets when they put you 6 feet under. And I'm just so proud that I was the one that was able to spark such an amazing nickname that is completely irrelevant to anything about you, but that's the best part of the nickname.
It's legendary for sure. It had to be fun for you. Obviously, you're announcing the picks as a representative of the Browns, but of course, you're going home, you know, being in front of all those. Did we lose Joe?
He's still
on
there?
His
phone, so if he gets a text,
all right.
Can you hear me?
Out, so.
Yeah, we got you. So,
there we go.
Yeah, obviously you got to be, you know, in front of the home fans in Wisconsin, so that had to be extra special for you, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are the guys and gals that I played in front of in college. And I grew up a Packer fan. I mean, you grow up in Cleveland, you're a Browns fan. You grow up in Wisconsin, you're a Packer fan. So even though I'm not cheering for them anymore, just the idea of being outside of Lambeau Field, which I don't care who you ask, even if they didn't grow up in Wisconsin, everyone says, hey, what's the best away game you play? It's always Lambeau Field. It's the oldest stadium in the NFL. It's got the history. Obviously, Vince Lombardi, the trophy that we're all playing for every year, you know, the NFL championship trophy is named after him. And so when you're there, you just get that feeling of the history of the NFL and the emotion that surrounds the draft and all the other teams, fans that are showing up there, and 200,000 people from the city of Green Bay and surrounding areas. It was just a really, really special moment. And then my son got to be up there and announce the pick with me. So it was an amazing, amazing scene.
Joe, I was like you. I'm a big guy. I like the big guys. I like the guys in the middle. I like defensive line, offensive line. You said you would prefer, you said, hey, what's the pick? You said Travis Hunter. I think you might have took it a little better than me. I cried that night. It's gone viral. I was not happy. As we look back on it, I'm okay with the draft. They did their thing. What was your thought originally when they passed on Travis Hunter? And do you see it as a better move now with the totality of the draft behind us?
Yeah, I think my disappointment was a little bit along the lines of probably most Browns fans. Is, you know, in my mind, I already saw Travis Hunter in the orange helmet. With the Hunter on the back of his jersey, and I was going to get my son the jersey, right? So it's like that Christmas present that you've already thought about all the million ways you're going to use them. And so there's a disappointment involved, but I think as time passes and you realize it was the right move, and you look at what they were able to get for that second pick, I mean, they completely dominated the draft trade value board, and they were still able to get and address their number one need with Mason Graham on the defensive line. And to be able to pair Mason Graham with Myles Garrett, you know, that makes me pretty happy too. That's a good Christmas gift by itself.
Joe, we have to get your thoughts on the whole Shedeur Sanders thing, the fact that no one took him until the 5th, he slid, and then the Browns finally jumped in there after taking a quarterback in the 3rd round. They took him in the 5th. What are your thoughts on drafting 2 quarterbacks and your quick assessment on Shedeur Sanders?
Well, I know that they didn't plan on drafting 2 quarterbacks. Obviously, they already had a bit of a full room, and knowing you'd take one and then now you take another one. But I think it was just such a good value where they were able to draft him, even though they didn't have him rated higher than Dillon Gabriel. I think when you look at Dillon Gabriel, he was a great quarterback in college, and there's a lot of question marks about does that skill set translate to the NFL game? Well, they'll find out pretty quick. I mean, once he goes through OTAs, minicamp, and a little bit of training camp, you'll see very quickly, like, yeah, this guy's got that intangible that overcomes any of those limitations with height and athleticism and arm strength, like kind of like a Russell Wilson did or like a Drew Brees did. Or you're going to find out pretty quick, like, yeah, the guy can't do it. And so I think you get a decision very quickly on Dillon Gabriel. And so that was part of what led him to say, you know what, let's take a flyer on Shedeur Sanders too, because when he's out there, you're also going to get a really good read on if this guy's somebody who can be a starting quarterback. And if you're able to get a starting quarterback in the later rounds of the NFL draft, that's just a tremendous value, because as we saw with Deshaun Watson, if you're going to pay market value for a starting quarterback, I mean, you're paying not only 35, 40 million of the salary cap, but usually you have to use a high first round draft pick. So I think it was great value, and they'll find out really quickly if these guys and the games that they bring to the NFL will be able to translate in spite of some of their physical limitations.
Joe, I'm really glad you said that, because I was thinking back. I remember Kyle Shanahan did an interview the year that they traded up and took Trey Lance, and then they also had Brock Purdy. And it was somewhere in training camp where Kyle was aggravated walking off the field, and he told the owner, the best quarterback on the field is the 7th round kid that we took last. And he said, I probably should have said that at the time, but like, it was true. When will they know if Shedeur Sanders is going to be on this football team? When will Kevin know?
Yeah, I think they'll know pretty quick in training camp. I mean, it was really obvious when guys would show up after we drafted them if they were going to have a chance and they were going to be contributors really quickly. And you knew the same thing on the other side of it. Like, we've had plenty of guys, even first-round picks, that show up and you're like, he's not going to be able to make it. You know? I'm not going to name names.
Does he have to? I don't think he has to. I think we know.
Yeah, we've got 5 or 6 of them we can throw at you.
Yeah, exactly. When they show up, or maybe when they don't show up to the first meetings that are mandatory, and you're like, okay, this is supposed to be our quarterback? I don't think this is going to work out. Very quickly. And so I think that's the great thing, about that position. And it's part of the reason Shedeur slid, right? There's only a few teams that need a quarterback. And if somebody deems that, there's something wrong with him, or they don't really like him at the top half of the draft, like a Pittsburgh or a New Orleans, because they don't think maybe his style or his size or maybe his arm strength fits with what they want to get done, like, there's nobody else that's going to move and take him, because that quarterback, you're not going to be able to move him to another position. It's not like Lamar Jackson. Obviously, he's become one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL, but coming out, people were willing to take a first-round pick on him, even though he slid, because they said, well, if we can't play him at quarterback, he's this fantastic athlete, we'll find a way to get him on the field. Yeah. Similar to the way you would say about an offensive lineman. You take a tackle, hey, maybe it doesn't work out, put him at guard, put him at center. You can find a way where he contributes to the team. But at quarterback, you either are the starter or maybe a backup, or you can't do it, and then he's not going to be in the league. So I think they'll find out really quickly, and it really makes our job in the preseason a lot more exciting, right? Yeah. Because we're going to be evaluating a lot of quarterbacks, and there's going to be conversations every single day about how Shedeur Sanders is doing and how he's adapting. And I think when you get a guy like that who maybe needed to get humbled a little bit in the late rounds, he's humbled really quickly, and he's walking in with his head down and his eyes open and his mouth shut, and he's just looking to prove himself with that additional chip on his shoulder. And so I think we got him obviously at the right point of the draft, but also I think with him sliding, he gets humbled a little bit, and he's going to come in ready to work.
So how does Kevin juggle this now? And for the sake of this, let's just assume it's mystery veteran X, whether it's Flacco or Pickett, and then the 2 rookies. I don't know if it's going to work out that way or not, but they just invested draft capital in these guys. Clearly, it feels like they were telling you we're going to go find our quarterback in 2026. So you have a finite window to figure out what you have in these guys. How do you operate this, and how do you juggle this and make sure you get a clear answer on these guys so that you know by the end of the season what you have in that room?
Yeah, it's really tricky. Obviously, you only have so many reps for quarterback, and assuming Joe Flacco is probably going to be the starter, at least on the depth chart to start the season, what you're going to do, the benefit of having Joe Flacco being an experienced vet is he doesn't have to take every rep with the ones to be up to speed. Like you saw, we picked him up mid-season and he was ready to go. So obviously you want to get the rust off. You want to get him comfortable with the other receivers, but he'll be able to split first team reps right away with those other guys. And so I think what happens is you end up kind of splitting second team reps between Kenny Pickett, Gabriel, and Sanders. And then also in that rotation of those three backups, they're going to get reps with the first team when Flacco's on the sidelines. So you're going to get a little bit extra first team look at these guys because you do have that entrenched veteran who doesn't need quite as many reps. But then also in training camp, they're going to really want to make sure that they get a lot of 7-on-7 periods because you can get a lot of reps at quarterback. You can split up the field where you got two fields going at once. So the first group's going on one field, the second group's going on the other field. And you can really rotate two guys in each group. So you are getting a lot more repetitions to get looks at those guys outside of just what you're getting in those team periods.
Joe, let's play fill in the blank. There's a saying that says if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. If you have four quarterbacks, you have blank.
A bounty of riches and an exciting training camp filled with drama. That's
Joe,
all I want.
I love that.
Joe, do you take it as a personal insult that they did not draft any offensive linemen?
Well, it wasn't a personal insult, but I thought it would have been nice to draft a lineman, certainly because you look at our O-line, we feel good about it, but DeJuan Jones has had injury concerns, obviously Jack Conklin, and, Joel's getting older, and, you got a lot of aging guys on your line that are going to need to be replaced, and today's line play in the NFL, I think it takes a couple years for most guys to get up to speed and to be ready to go play NFL snaps, and ideally, if I was looking at a draft, I would say, hey, every year I want to take a couple mid to late round draft picks at the offensive line position, and you start developing them, and after a year or two, you realize, okay, yeah, they can play, or no, they can't, and then you find somebody else. It's almost like the strategy that Mike Holmgren used to have at quarterback. He would always take a mid-round flyer at quarterback because he knew how long it takes to develop those positions and how valuable it is if you're able to find somebody in those mid to late rounds, and that's kind of the way I feel about O-line.
Joe, did Joel Bitonio reach out to you when he was making his decision? And either way, were you surprised how it ended up turning out?
We did talk, and he's been a friend. I leave him alone for the most part during the season, but in the off season, we usually try to get together. And I love the guy, and candidly, I told him when we were talking, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to try to convince you one way or the other, but as a good friend of yours who played next to you for a long time, who's now retired, like, play as long as you possibly can. Like, if I could still play, if the knees were willing, I would be, because there's nothing in life that will give you so much purpose and satisfaction and paycheck as the NFL. And when it's over, it's easy. And I had the same conversation with Lane Johnson this offseason. I said, when it's over forever. Like, you never have a chance to go back and say, no, I think I want to play some more. Like, it's done. And it's 1 year of your life. He's coming off of a really hard season. It was hard for everybody that was a Browns fan or a player. And that taste is in your mouth. And it's like, man, I don't want to go through that same thing again. I hope we're better, but I also don't want to go through it. And you think about the toll that a season takes on your body. But if you're healthy enough to do it, like, it's 1 year of your life and you got the rest of your life to reflect back on it. And the last thing you want to ever do is think, man, I wish I would have just played one more season. I had it in me and I could have done it, but it's that regret that you'll have to live with for the rest of your life. If you ever sit there in retirement, you say, I wish I would have played one more. I was lucky that I couldn't play anymore, and I've never had that feeling of, oh man, I should have played another season, because I just knew I couldn't. My body was not willing. And the other thing I shared with Joel is, like, if you're wavering and you think you might or you don't want to play, and you're kind of going back and forth, like, to me that means you can. You're ready to retire when every bone in your body and every person in your life is saying it's time to retire. Then it's time to retire. It's kind of like being injured. I always thought to myself, like, I'll know when I'm too injured to play when it's without a doubt in my mind. If I'm wondering, I don't know, I think I can do it, like, you can do it. And I think it's the same thing about going back and playing.
Great insight.
I mean, that's a great segue.
Yeah.
I mean, when the heck did you know you needed a hip replacement, Joe? Like, it wasn't like we was asking you all the time, like, can you come back and play? Did you kind of, like, little do they know, this hip over here is not good at all. How was the procedure? How you healing up? And when did you know, like, I might get this taken care of?
Yeah, so I'd had hip problems, playing, but that's really common for any lineman, certainly. But actually, I thought it was my back that was giving me issues. When I was living in Germany and I was coaching, like, I got to the point during the season where I would wear 2 back braces.
Oof.
And I would bring a chair out to practice to be able to sit because I couldn't stand. And I had these back spasms that were going on for months and months. And I kind of thought it was a back issue. And then when I got back to the States, I went to go see the Browns docs and got an MRI and visited with Dr. Voos and Dr. Salata. And they were like, your hip is in really bad shape. And I'm like, thinking maybe we can resurface it or do something. And they're like, there's really nothing we can do. You've got a cyst on one side, you're bone on bone on the other side, and your labrum's torn completely all the way around. And they said, the injuries that you got in the hip is actually what's causing probably the back problems. And it made perfect sense, right? Even though I have like bulging discs in my back, that's common, and I probably had them since college. And so it was amazing. As soon as I took care of the hip, like I haven't had one back issue whatsoever. And and already I'm like, man, I'm so happy. And I'm up walking around. I'm at the farm today working with my cattle. So like, I feel like it was a great decision. I'm only a month out.
Wow. That's awesome.
Beautiful, man.
Joe, I want to take you back to a dark period now. You went through 1-31, and we were talking earlier on the show about, like, it feels to me like this is a transition season. You can call it gentleman's punt, you can call it tank, whatever you want. You saw how bad their offense was last year, and they traded down from 2, and their top 2 picks were on the defensive side of the ball. They are not trying to win this year. They are trying to get a quarterback for next year, is how I'm reading it. If I'm wrong, correct me on that. And if I'm right, how difficult is that as a player in the locker room? And by the way, I think it's the right decision. But as a player in the locker room who's going out there and competing, you mentioned Joel earlier, and you mentioned he knows what he's signing up for. It can't possibly be as bad as last year. How do you reconcile that in your mind when you're trying to compete and win as many games as you can, but maybe not necessarily everyone in the organization is feeling the same way?
I think most teams in the NFL, when they look at their chances of success or failure, and certainly from a management level, when you're thinking, all right, how much of our resources do we want to commit to this year? Because there's a rule with the NFL collective bargaining agreement and the salary cap that excess salary cap that you don't spend this year, you can roll it over into following years, right? It's what we did in that 1-31 stretch to be able to save salary cap space to hopefully sign guys when you do get that franchise quarterback. And you do need that extra cap space. And it makes total sense to not want to go all in if you don't have a quarterback. And clearly, that's the decision that they've made because we don't have that long-term franchise quarterback yet. And it is a tough decision, but it is the right decision because it's foolish to go all in when you have question marks at the quarterback position. So as a player, it's challenging a little bit. But I think also when you've got a guy like Flacco, it brings a lot of calm to the players, knowing that, hey, this guy can still play. Like when he was with us last time, a couple years ago, he played really good football and he had us in the playoffs and, didn't play his best game. And so we lost. But like he gives you enough hope, I think, that if you're looking at our defense and you say, hey, if they can be the defense that we had 2 years ago and be the number 1 defense in the NFL, we got a chance in every game, right? And if we can take care of our part on offense and hopefully with some of these additions at running back and the new tight end, like you're thinking and you're talking yourself into, okay, our offense can at least be middle of the pack. And with a number 1 overall defense, like teams have won the Super Bowl with that formula before. And so I think it's not as hopeless as the situation was when we went that 1-31 stretch.
Sure.
Is there any way we can get McNuggets one of those Hall of Fame beef shirts you're sporting?
Yeah, baby, absolutely.
He'd fill that
I can
up
send
well.
you guys some sticks. Yeah, he'd look good in this Hall of Fame beef shirt. But he looks good in everything, so let's be honest.
Yeah, today he's wearing a little, I think, what is that, Emerson
yeah.
women's basketball shirt?
Emerson soccer today.
Okay.
Repping all the sports.
All right.
Yeah. Equal
I
opportunity.
think he'd fill out that Hall of Fame beef for
I thought
sure.
it said beer.
No, I said beef.
No, Hall of Fame beef. Hey, Joe, before we let you go, this is the silliest exercise in all of sports, and we had to participate. So I'll ask you, do you have an overall grade for the Browns draft?
I give them a B. Like I think they did a really good job with value at the picks that they took. They addressed their need at defensive tackle. They were able to pick up additional picks, including next year, which I think the value of those was really good. And understanding that next year's quarterback draft's a lot better, so you may need some additional ammo if you identify a guy and you go through this season and Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel or maybe even Kenny Pickett, which I don't think so, but if any of those guys that are with you, you don't identify as the quarterback of your future, you got that ammunition to get what you need next year, which is great. I think I would have liked to see them draft an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And how the draft unfolded, you can't always control. But the fact that you got Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, I'm sure they're wishing that Gabriel pick could have been used on maybe an offensive lineman, maybe a safety, somebody like that, maybe a receiver. But the draft doesn't always unfold the way you expect, clearly. And so I do like the value that they got with Shedeur Sanders because he might turn into a legitimate starter for us, and you got him in the 5th round.
Yeah. Very quick, Joe. Abdul Carter asked Lawrence Taylor to use his number. I think he's out of line even asking that question, in my opinion. I think he's completely out of line to ask that question. What say you?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. Share a little story with you. So when Jed Wills got drafted, I was kind of helping him around, and it was during COVID, and he asked me for my number, and I was a little caught off guard, but I'm like, hey, if everybody in the building okay with it, I wasn't going to be like, no, it's my number. Leave me alone. But Kevin Stefanski stepped in, and he was like, hey, pump the brakes, big boy.
Yeah,
you got to do a few things to put some pump on the wall in the NFL before you have his number.
That is a great story. I've never heard it.
Hope that Lawrence doesn't have to be the bad guy, and that Brian Dable steps in and is like, okay, why don't you have a sack in the NFL before you get
right.
Oh my
That's great.
God.
I'm glad I asked you that. Thanks, Joe.
We just made some news.
Yeah.
Joe, it's always great to have you on. We appreciate your insight.
Clip that.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Can't wait